This week, the Democratic National Convention kicked off its celebrity-heavy festival with a land acknowledgement from a local Native American tribe. This is a practice that has become commonplace at Democratic gatherings in the last couple of years, and here at the Chrestman Conversation, we try to be sensitive to all the new social justice talk, so we thought we'd give it a try. I'll start. My name is Tyler Chrestman, and my pronouns are Z-Zim Zippity Doodah. I want to acknowledge that before the city of St. Louis was established, it was occupied by many Native American tribes who deserve this land much more than the evil whites who possess it now. This includes the Osage, Miami, Sioux, and Iroquois Indians. You may ask, how did so many tribes live here in peaceful cohabitation in the past? The answer, they didn't. They constantly warred and killed each other for control of the land and resources because the idea of the enlightened native always was and always will be propaganda. Oops, I think I did this land acknowledgement thing wrong. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Okay, today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the Democratic National Convention. Going to be hitting some highlights or possibly lowlights of the convention there in Chicago. It's every 4 years these happen. The Republicans do one, the Democrats do one. They're always nonsense to me because it's just, they're not giving you any substance. It's all style and flash and pizzazz. And the Democrats are no different than the Republicans in this regard. This one was pretty bad, but it's about run-of-the-mill. It's not really that much worse than normal, but we're going to touch on some things because that's what's in the news this week. Everyone's talking about the Democratic National Convention and blah, 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 blah. So we're going to talk all about it. Anyway, first, though, we have to do my favorite comment from last week. Our friend Tom, who I ran into the other day, actually said, and I quote, "The cat is a nice touch," end of quote. Now, Tom, I agree. The cat is a nice touch, and as I said, Vito Corleone and I share many distinguished traits, one of which being our fondness of felines. Now, on to the DNC. I want to start first where they started. The DNC opened its entire convention. Now, think about this for a second. You are talking about a political party. There are multiple in the United States, but really there are two. You can talk about the Libertarians, you can talk about the Green Party, you can talk about any of these other ones that pop up every once in a while for some reason or another. But there are two political parties in the United States. And one of them, both of them think the other one is crazy. You look at Republicans and they think the Democrats are crazy. The Democrats think the Republicans are crazy. And the reality is, if you try and be objective, and I try and be objective about these things sometimes because I worry about this, because I remember coming up as somebody who was very much on the left, I had giant blind spots that I didn't know existed until you familiarize yourself with the argument on the other side. This is a mistake that I don't make anymore. If I have an opinion about something, it tends to be because I've read at least a little bit about both sides of the issue, because you need to read someone who is a good defender of the opposite opinion so you can form a good opinion and a good argument on a subject, because if you only know one half of the argument, you don't know anything. If you only know one side of the debate, you don't know anything. You don't understand it. So I understand both sides of party politics right now fairly well. And I will tell you that the Democrats are the party of the crazy people. It really is the case. You can point to Trump all you want, but Democrats, they do weird things. They do not behave like regular Americans in the middle of the country, and their party does not reflect most people. I know a lot of Democrats who are going to vote Democrat. And so when you look at the polls, when you look at a number of elections, they'll say things like, oh, I'm going to vote Democrat. But then they'll confide to me that the Democratic Party is insane. And I know a lot of people who have switched to the Republican Party because they say the Democratic Party, they might even believe in a lot of what they want them to vote for, but they just don't represent them anymore because they do weird things. These land acknowledgements are stupid. They are really dumb. And the DNC, one of the two major political parties, chose to open their entire convention where they're supposed to nominate, they're supposed to present their nominee for president with a land acknowledgement from a Native American tribe. This is nonsense. So the Prairie Band, ooh man, I wish I would have listened to this again before I try and say it. The Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation Tribal Council. They had these people up there to speak. They said, and this is one of the quotes from their opening speech, quote, "From time immemorial, our ancestors lived in the Great Lakes region. However, in 1849, an illegal auction by the United States government forcibly removed our tribe from our homeland. Since then, we have been working to reclaim it." End quote. It's hard to unpack the entirety of the history of Native Americans into a cohesive and cogent, very succinct way. But let me just explain something to people out there who might not know. The Europeans who came over here and populated the United States did not actually commit genocide against the Native Americans in the way that people think about genocide, like World War II genocide, where we exterminated Jews, where Germans exterminated Jews en masse. That is not what happened with the history of Native Americans. Native Americans were treated very poorly by white people from Europe on a whole. This is not something that we're going to dispute. But they say that upwards of 90% of the Native American population was killed by disease. Not intentionally. There are some cases where people intentionally did this, germ warfare, smallpox, blankets, and whatnot. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about casual contact with Europeans brought disease that the Native Americans had no immunity to and then killed their people. And this is not the fault of the Europeans. They didn't do this intentionally. People didn't even understand germs when you're talking about the 1500s. People didn't know that germs existed. So it's true that in the later years, like let's say when the white people settled on the East Coast and then expanded westward, there were clashes with Native Americans, and then the United States government behaved poorly because the people who were expanding westward, they were faced with aggressive and oftentimes very violent Native American tribes. Because one of the facts that people don't like to acknowledge is the fact that a lot of, and I would say probably most, Native American tribes, there are 900 registered tribes, most of them are actually not very peaceful farmer agricultural types. No, they were war bands. You think about the history of the Cherokee and the Iroquois Indians or the Blackhawks, and you think about these tribes, they are not known to be peaceful humanitarians. No, they were known as warring tribes. And they fought wars amongst each other constantly. When I listed in the intro here, a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's true. In the past, and I won't remember the names off the top of my head, but I remember they did this at Mount Rushmore. They did one of these land acknowledgments. They opened a speech. They gave a land acknowledgement. And then all you have to do is dig. And you say, well, the tribe that they acknowledged, well, how'd they get that land? Well, they actually took it from another tribe. And then before that, they had taken it from another tribe through war, through conquest. So this idea we're going to acknowledge, it's true that the United States government did a bad job of treating the Native Americans in a good way. This is absolutely true. It was bigoted and it was wrong. But if you want to say that the history of civilization is one of people being nice, when civilizations meet, one of which is just super nice to the other one and everyone has a tea party, this is not true ever in history, that two civilizations meet and there isn't a clash. So the Western, which is weird because we're going to call European the Western civilization, but Western civilization met the Native Americans, and what happened? A conflict ensued, and the Western culture, the European culture, won. That's what happened. People will call them colonizers. We're not colonizers. We're conquerors. They conquered Native Americans. That's what happened. And yes, there are times when it should have been done better, and times when Native Americans were treated very poorly by the government, which is wrong. We're not talking about individual bigotry here. We're talking about governments that made treaties and then broke them. This is wrong at any time. You shouldn't have a government that does this. But how many times have a conquered people then had their entire culture preserved, land given to them, all these things that the U.S. has done for Native Americans? Because why? Because we are benevolent conquerors. We didn't just wipe them out and destroy them, which is the history of most conflict in the past, but instead we have given them reservations, they don't pay taxes, all these different things. And again, I'm not saying this is makes up for everything. But what I'm saying is you're saying, oh, we're going to reclaim Chicago. No, you're not. No, I don't care that you had 20 million acres. You couldn't hold it because your civilization wasn't as advanced and wasn't as good at fighting. That's really what it comes down to. The world would be Nazis right now if the U.S. hadn't gotten involved at World War II and kicked the asses of the SS. That's the way it would be. And do you think the Germans would have given little enclaves to people? No, because they were an evil government run by a dictatorous, murderous, genocidal maniac. And so when you say, oh, the Native Americans were treated poorly by the U.S., well, yes, because they lost. That's really what it comes down to. And you could say, as I just did, that there are many examples where the U.S. government should have treated Native Americans better. Yes. But to say like, oh, we're working to reclaim Chicago, no. No, you don't get to have it back. I'm sorry. I don't care. I don't care that you lost the war. It doesn't matter. You're talking hundreds of years ago. You don't get it back. We don't get to go I'm trying to think of a good example. France. France used to control Italy. Do you think France gets to go and say, all right, Italy, historically, this was ours until you kicked Napoleon out, and we don't like it, so we should go back to having it. You could say, well, the Italians had it before. There was no country of Italy before. Italy didn't exist before. Italy was a series of nation states. Venice and Florence and all these places, they were their own countries. So there's no historical Italy. So why does Italy get to exist? Oh, because the French unified it. The French unified Italy. Why don't they get to take it? Okay, well, that doesn't track. It maybe is not the best analogy. You could go to the Middle East and make it more complicated with the history of Israel versus the Palestinian state versus everybody else. Oh, the fact that Jordan didn't exist as an entity, or the fact that the Palestinians have never had a state called Palestine, that doesn't matter to anybody because they'll say, well, Palestine from the river to the sea needs to be free, but also there's no historical Palestine. It doesn't exist. It's never been a country. The Native Americans, they lost, and these land acknowledgement things are just asinine. I am all for having respect for a culture. It's great that there is a Native American culture. We should be nicer to them. The reservations, we should do whatever we can to preserve the culture of different people. I like that. I think that that's fine. That's great. But don't get to come there and say, well, the United States stole our land and we're going to take it back. We're going to reclaim Chicago because they broke a treaty because they had an illegal auction in 1849. I don't care. All right, I don't care to hear about what happened 170 years ago when the United States government was so mean and nasty. You weren't alive. No one was alive. Get over it. And that's the history of civilization. That's the history of conquer and conquerors. We're not colonizers. We're conquerors. We conquered this land. It's ours. And you don't get to ask for it back because that's not the way it works. And I just think I don't like how patronizing and condescending these things are. I get it. You have to, in order to claim to be a leftist, you have to care about every person's suffering ever, all times, forever, in perpetuity. So you go back 170 years and say the U.S. was bad 170 years ago and we acknowledge your pain and blah, blah, blah. These are the same people who tell you don't understand what someone's like because you're not a woman or you're not black or this or that. But you have to understand everybody's pain in this case, in the case where it works for them. It's silly. It's silly. We can say, hey, the history is one of checkered decisions, good and bad, right and wrong, that were done by everybody. But to pretend that the Native Americans were just the most peaceful, innocent people who ever existed, and they sang Kumbaya, and they sat cross-legged and smoked the peace pipe, and all they wanted was friendship, it's just not true. It's historically not true, and it isn't true for any people of any time. You have Buddhist monks in Tibet who waged war against each other. Buddhist monks, okay? So there's no culture that is just completely innocent and good and peaceful. It doesn't exist. So I don't like it. I don't like this kind of stuff. I think it's silly and nonsensical. But anyway, we're going to move on. I could rant on this forever, but I'm not going to. We're going to move on to the first day of the DNC. The first day, the keynote speaker, the end of the day, the last man out, Joe Biden. He shuffled out of the catacombs to give a speech. It was 11:30 at night when he came out. I don't know who's keeping this man up past his bedtime, but surprisingly, he did pretty well. He stayed on teleprompter. He seemed to do all of this. The whole thing started with a 4-minute standing ovation. Joe Biden shuffles out on stage. He's got his slippers on, and he's shuffling out on stage like it's the last call for pudding at the snack bar at the old Bethesda rest home. And the guy, he comes out there, and he gets a 4-minute standing ovation. And I want people to realize something here. How insulting is it to basically get a 4-minute ovation for quitting, for leaving, for not trying, for bowing out? It's a 4-minute standing ovation based on the fact that you stepped aside because you're bad at your job and you're possibly really in cognitive decline. Think about that for a second. If you were, I don't know, in any job whatsoever, you work in an office, and one day you quit, and then you go back, and everyone gives you a standing ovation. They say, oh, that Tom in accounting, thank you for stepping aside. Thank you for, let's clap up here so it doesn't sound perverted. Oh, Tom, oh, wait, we got a button for this, don't we? Is it this one? What is it? Hold on, we'll find it. Yeah, there it is. You go back to the office, and this is all you hear. You hear cheers. You hear applause. Everyone's going, oh, Tom, thanks for leaving. 4-minute standing ovation. You're the best. Thanks for stepping aside. Do you not feel insulted? Do you think Joe Biden didn't stand up on that stage and look around for 4 minutes and go, these fucking people, these people out here, how could they do this to me? They pushed me to the side. They shuffled my wheelchair into the corner and put the brakes on so he couldn't get back into the race. It's just insulting. And I'm not even going to get into what his speech was really about, except one line that I want to pluck out of there. But I couldn't imagine being that man right now. You're the president of the United States. They put you in there day one, and they never talked about him again. Day one of the thing, he ends the night when everyone is gone home and gone to sleep. They put him on the stage, and he gets through the teleprompter speech, and then he leaves. He shuffles off to wherever he's going. And they never talk about him again. It's just insulting, and it's embarrassing. It's an embarrassment to be that man at this point. I feel bad for him, and I'm saying that with sincerity. I feel bad for him. That is, it couldn't imagine being in this position where nobody likes you. It just must be so difficult. There are so many people who don't like me, but I'll never be able to say nobody likes me. That's just not true. I got a lot of people who like me, and I'm okay with that. I don't want everyone to like me. If everyone liked me, I feel like I'd be doing something wrong. I feel like feeding into audience capture if I was just saying things to get people to like me. So the fact that half the people don't like me, I'm totally fine with this. That makes sense. It means you're being honest. And really, it should probably be more than half the people. If you're speaking truth, if you're saying what you want, or saying what you think and what you believe to be true, people are not going to like you. And that's okay. But not everyone has to like you all the time. Be comfortable with that. But Joe Biden, he doesn't have any friends. He's got no friends. Nobody wants him. And that's sad. I feel bad for him. I do want to talk about this quote that he had in his speech. He said, quote, "The protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot of innocent people are being killed on both sides." So we're going to skip down here to the end real quick because I have this out of order. But he's talking about there were protests this whole week outside the DNC. These pro-Gaza, pro-Hamas, pro-moron supporters of Gaza, I guess is what you want to call them. And these anti-Israel protesters, these anti-Semites are outside. Thousands of people, upwards of possibly 20,000 people in the streets protesting the DNC, protesting the Democratic Party based on the war in the Middle East between Israel and Gaza, Israel and Hamas. And Joe Biden says these people have a point. Oh, these people out in the street, they have a point. What is their point? The point is that they don't know anything. The point is that they're useful idiots who don't know anything about the Middle East and are protesting the only democracy in the Middle East and the only ally that we have in the entire region. That's what's happening. 70 people were arrested. At least 70 people have been arrested for vandalism, and I think some of which was obstruction of justice, and I think some assaults on police officers. 70 people were arrested protesting. Joe Biden says these people have a point. These people out there, they have a point. People in Chicago were boarding up windows prior to the DNC, knowing that the Democrats can't control their own base. They just can't. They can't control the people who are outside. They know the Democrats get violent. They know the Democrats riot. The Democrats loot. People were boarding up buildings in Chicago prior to this. The National Guard was called in prior to the DNC, knowing that the protesters were going to be there. These are people, we can say that they're anti the Democratic Party, but it's not true. These people, the uncommitted movement, let's put that in quotes, the uncommitted movement, these people will never vote Republican. There's no danger to the Democrats that these people vote Republican. They can stay home, but they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. So the Democrats, they own these people. These people might be outside protesting the DNC, but the main people within the DNC, the squad members, they embrace these people. Ilhan Omar was out there hugging the co-founder of the non-committed movement. AOC gave him praise. Joe Biden gave him praise from the pulpit, from the lectern that he is speaking at. They say, these people outside, they're great, and we understand what they mean. They're not letting them inside, but they're not disowning them either, because they can't say that because they need those votes. So the Democrats own these people. As much as it's a protest, quote unquote protest outside, the Democrats own these people because that's the base. That is why they didn't talk about Israel in the DNC. They barely mentioned it. The only people that mentioned it, Biden mentioned it, and they had the family of a hostage, an American hostage who was taken by Hamas, who was up there. And I don't know why they're speaking at the DNC. What has Joe Biden been doing for your son? I'm not going to get, that's a parent's grief. I don't know. So I won't say too much about it, but I just can't imagine how you can support that party, knowing that they are so anti-Israel, knowing that they support the people who took your son and in all likelihood have murdered him. I don't understand that. I won't understand the mindset, but I'm not going to also badmouth them. But that's it. They did not focus on this at all because they can't. They cannot focus on the Israel-Gaza war because their base doesn't support them. There is a split in the Democratic Party, and half of which supports Israel, less than half probably support Israel, and half of which support Hamas, are openly pro-sympathetic to a terrorist organization that does evil, unspeakable things. They kill babies. They rape women to death. That's where the Democratic Party stands. That's where half of the Democratic Party has sympathies with those people. So Joe Biden, AOC, these people give them credence. They give them acceptance into the party, even if they're outside the doors pretending that they're not inside. They are inside the party. They are in that building. And the fact that Joe Biden gives them a shout out is just ridiculous to me. Who else spoke? We have Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow. Don't know who this person is, but I thought this was hilarious. So this is a real quote from a Michigan State Senator giving a speech at the DNC. Said that Donald Trump is, quote, going to turn the FBI into his own personal police force. And then went on to say, that is not how it works in America. That is how it works in dictatorship, and that's exactly what Donald Trump and his MAGA minions have in mind, an expansion of presidential powers like no president has ever had or should ever have. End of quote. The irony is lost on this woman. You are a Democrat. You're giving a speech. Joe Biden just spoke. Joe Biden has issued more executive orders than any president in history. He has used the power of the pen to expand presidential powers more than any president in history. Right now, Steve Bannon is in jail, a former Trump operative, for defying a subpoena from Congress. You have, what was that guy's name? The other Trump staffer who just got out of, Peter Navarro. Peter Navarro just got out of prison. Okay? He was put in jail. Mike Flynn, Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon. Donald Trump has been convicted of 34 felonies. He's got 18,000 criminal court cases, some of which based on the Joe Biden's DOJ. What are you talking about? Donald Trump is the threat to American democracy using the FBI against people, using the DOJ against people. Your party is doing that right now. This is the law of projection that the Democrats participate in. Everything that they accuse the Republicans of doing, they're doing, and it's good when they do it and it's bad when the Republicans do it. So it's good. Donald Trump is a criminal, guys. Don't you know? That's why he's got so many criminal cases. That's why the DOJ has to go against him, because he's violating the law. And that's all the Democrats are doing. They're following the law. But if Donald Trump got in office and he launched an investigation of Hunter Biden and his corrupt dealings in Ukraine that implicated Joe Biden, well, then he's turning the DOJ into his own personal police force. Guys, that's just, don't you understand how it works? When Donald Trump gets fined $500 billion by the state of New York, that's because he's so bad at his criminal criming. He's just criming all over the place. He just can't stop himself from breaking the laws. He jaywalks every time. He never has used a crosswalk. Donald Trump never once in his life used a crosswalk. He's always jaywalking. He double parks. He's a bad guy. He needs to go to prison forever, guys, because he's such a criminal. But when you say, well, maybe we should investigate those Democrats for their corrupt dealings, then you're politicizing it. You're just politicizing the DOJ, and that's what bad Republicans do, and it's not what the Democrats do. The Democrats just go after the criminals who happen to be in the opposition. That's it. When the criminals all happen to be Republicans, and the Democrats just know that, and so that's totally fine when they break the law. But obviously, when the Republicans try and target the criminals who happen to be Democrats, then that's bad news. And Donald Trump's going to do that. And the fact that Joe Biden's doing it right now means he's not really doing it because the Republicans are bad. Don't you guys understand the logic? I'm trying to explain it as clearly as I can. Don't you get it? When Mallory McMorrow stands up there and says Donald Trump is going to do all these bad things that Joe Biden is doing if he gets elected, and we can't have that. It's just the irony is completely lost. The room applauds. They erupt into cheers. Yeah, we don't want that bad Donald Trump. He's the worst. It's like all these things that she's listing Joe Biden are doing. It gets a big applause, big laugh line from the Republicans, big applause from the Democrats. And it's ridiculous. It really is. It's just silly how people don't seem to, I don't know what it is. Is it if it's just a case of whataboutism? Because they say, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? I get accused of that sometimes. The January 6th stuff gets me the most because my opinions on this are so clear. And I can lay it out here in 15 seconds. You say, people will accuse me of whataboutism because I'll say things like, I don't care about January 6th. And they don't understand. It blows your mind. Oh, what do you mean? You're fine with riots? No, I detest violence. I detest violence of any political violence at all. Violence for almost any reason. I detest it. So you asked me, what do you think of January 6th? Well, I think it was stupid. I think it was a bunch of people who did some stupid stuff, but do I think about it as the worst thing? Do I think democracy was on the brink? No, I think that's silly. I think that's such an overstatement. It's absurd. What I think is a bunch of people broke into the Capitol, did very little damage to the building, so it's hard to even call it a riot. I think some people were injured in the scuffle, which is bad. Anyone who tangles with the police is bad. And I think it was stupid. Do I think it was the worst thing that ever happened to America? No, I think it was embarrassing and stupid. But so then I say I don't care about January 6th because that's what I believe about it. I don't think it was a big deal because I just think it was stupid. I think it was a bunch of people acting dumb, but you're talking about less than 1,000 people who went into the Capitol in one day. And I say, yeah, I don't really care. Oh, Donald Trump should have done this. He was going to steal the Republic, and I heard he had ducked the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution into the inner lining of his jacket so he could escape with democracy. No, Donald Trump wasn't close to doing this. It was dumb. The whole thing was dumb. Nothing happened. That's my opinion. So then I say I don't care about January 6th because I think the 2020 riots were way worse than January 6th because it lasted for an entire summer, caused billions of dollars worth of damage, injured many people. They say that upwards of 50, 100 people could have died because of the results of those riots. And also it affected me personally because there are buildings around me that have never been rebuilt that were burnt down during those riots. So when I say, I think that's worse. So when you say, well, what about January 6th? I say, well, I don't care. And people say, well, that's whataboutism. Well, you're saying, what about this? What about that? And the answer is no. You have to be able to weigh sides of an equation. I have two choices. And if on one side you say, Donald Trump's bad, here's January 6th as an example, I say, well, on that side, Democrats bad, here's the 2020 riots as an example, which way counterbalances that in Donald Trump's favor, in my opinion. You're allowed to have your own opinion. But this is all that we tend to talk about. Excuse me. Oh my gosh, I'm dying over here. So anyway, I'm getting off track here. But the idea is that they can't understand when the Republicans say the Democrats are doing this. They say, well, what about the Republicans? And the Republicans do the same thing. What about the Democrats? What about this? Oh, the Republicans did something bad here. What about when the Democrats did something bad here? I think that whole thing's stupid. But you have to also be able to weigh the options. We only have two options, two realistic options. RFK is not going to win. Jill Stein's not going to win. Whatever dumb the Libertarians nominate is not going to win. Maybe a little harsh. Libertarian candidates tend to be pretty bad, just saying. So they're not going to win. So you have Donald Trump and you have Kamala Harris. And I look at what each of them support. I don't care what they say. I care what they do. I care what they support. I care what they have done, what they have accomplished. Kamala Harris, the answer is nothing. She has no substance. Everything she's done has been bad or poorly done, poorly worded. Donald Trump, I can point to accomplishments he did that I actually enjoy. And that's all that matters to me. So anyway, there were too many people to talk about at the DNC. They brought out all the big guns. You got the Obamas, both of them, the Clintons, both of them. Oprah was there, Stevie Wonder, so many people. But they all said the things that you'd expect them to say. They're not really worth getting into. There were good speeches and bad speeches, but it is. I don't care what you think about Barack Obama. I do not care. You could think he's the evil incarnate or the best thing that ever lived, but there's one thing you can't deny. Two things, actually, you can't deny about the man. One being he's very smart. He's a very smart person. This is just is true. From a raw IQ level, Barack Obama is incredibly smart. And the other one is, well, that guy's a hell of an orator. He can speak. He's probably one of the best politicians on the stump giving speeches there is. He gave a great speech, and if you ignore the partisan leanings for a second and just try and on its merits, just take it as a speech, he's a great speech writer and presenter. So he gave a good one. The Clintons did pretty well. Nothing really. It's all the same pap you expect. Trump's bad. Democrats good. January 6th is the worst. And I mean, really, that's all there was to it. It's not anything special. The DNC, it's basically a commercial. It's supposed to be a commercial for the candidate. And it was a commercial. This whole thing was a commercial for Kamala Harris. And they did a good job. And you have to realize something here. This is the important thing. This whole thing that is happening right now, it's very important to understand. It's all a commercial for Kamala Harris. Even those people outside burning the American flags. That's how, by the way, that's always my opinion on whether, you're the good guys or the bad guys. The good guys don't burn American flags. The bad guys burn American flags. So the protesters outside burning American flags, just let me know, okay, you're the bad guys. You're burning the American flag, you're bad. You're the bad guy. So even those people outside, they're not against Kamala Harris. Some of them are. They say, oh, she's complicit. She works for Joe Biden. She's just as bad. But they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. They're going to vote for the Democrat. So as a commercial for Kamala Harris, this thing was really good. Very star-studded, lots of big names, lots of music, lots of high-powered celebrities. Harris is the nominee now. Waltz is the nominee. This is the worst presidential ticket in history. Make no mistake about that. These two are terrible. Tim Walz seems to be a congenital liar. He can't stop himself from embellishing, exaggerating, and flat out lying about things. He seems like a terrible pick. But the media is going to ignore it, and most people aren't going to be aware of it. Harris, she couldn't talk herself out of a paper bag or solve the maze on the back of a box of Captain Crunch, but she is the nominee, and the media is going to do everything to make her look great. And they're dangerous because of this. They are dangerous because the media is going to make them seem competent. They're going to make them seem like they are good and smart individuals. Look around. Look around and realize there are people out there who are going to vote for these people who actually like them because they don't know better. They're dangerous. They could win. They could easily win. And you have to realize that, and you have to do what is in your power out there to make sure that doesn't happen. You got to vote. You got to convince people to vote. You got to have uncomfortable conversations. You got to convince people that these people don't know what they're talking about, and their policies are bad. They're bad for America. You might think they're nice. You might think that they're accepting. You might think that they're whatever. Fill in the blank. That Donald Trump is a mean, big, nasty, mean man. But it doesn't matter. Look at what Kamala Harris has done in the last 4 years. She has been the vice president. She supports the Joe Biden policies. She claimed proudly she was the last person in the room on Afghanistan. Think about that. Remember, don't forget, remember how bad Afghanistan was. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, how embarrassing that was for America on the world stage. Kamala Harris said she's the last person in the room making that decision. Think about that. When you want to vote, tell people that. When they want to vote, when anyone says anything nice about Kamala Harris, pull up a clip of her talking about Venn diagrams or yellow school buses or her awkward cackle or the fact that she's never been to Europe. Pull up these clips. Show them how bad she is. People want to talk about how Donald Trump, his speeches are simplistic. He doesn't pretend to be anything else. He's just Donald Trump. Kamala Harris pretends to be a well-educated, very smart person. I almost said Ivy League, but that's not true. She went to Howard University. She couldn't pass the bar in California. I could pass the bar in California if you give me like 2 weeks to study. This is not a competent person to be running the government. And people are going to vote for her, though. This whole thing, the DNC convention, it went nice. If you don't know anything, if you just listen to the speeches, if you just watch the events, listen to the music, the Democrats seem cool. They got cool people coming out there and talking and doing the old soft shoe routine. That's fine. They're doing their job. Your job is to convince people that they're wrong and it's wrong to vote for them. And that's the responsibility of every person out there who wants to vote for Donald Trump. You don't just get to vote for Donald Trump. You have to bring someone along with you. You have to get someone else in the camp, one of these undecided voters. I know in my personal life, I have brought some people over to the dark side, voted for Donald Trump. Some people, and I'm going to whisper this so you guys know. Some of those people, hold on. I'm going to whisper this because it's a secret. Some of those people I know who voted for Donald Trump are black. And some of them are women. And some of them are other kinds of minorities like Asian. And they voted for Donald Trump. And I don't know if you knew this because Donald Trump, only white people vote for Donald Trump. But I've brought some of those people over to the dark side. They voted for Donald Trump. The Democrats no longer have a lock on demographics in this country. They don't, because they have done a poor job of doing anything of substance for communities that actually are suffering. Black people in St. Louis, they don't like crime. They don't want to defund the police. When you talk to them, that's not what they want. The Democrats they've gone off a rocker with this stuff, and the Republicans can bring on people to vote for them that they never historically have done. Donald Trump polls better with black Americans than any Republican in history, because black people, I think, recognize that Donald Trump has been in the cultural eye for 40 plus years. And I don't know, how many hip hop songs do we have that mention Donald Trump before he became president of the United States? He was a cultural icon in a certain sense, very famous for being rich and being a playboy and all these things. And now he's bringing people into the party, and it's your job as conservatives, as Republicans out there, to bring other people in. If Donald Trump can do it, you can do it. You got to convince someone that Kamala Harris is not the one. And do it by being nice. Do it by using reason and logic. So you don't have to sit here like I do and just make fun of her. Get out there. Use reason, logics. Pull up all the things that she has done poorly. And just show people. Show people the reality on the ground. And you will change minds. Anyway, we are going to leave it there for the week. I am Tyler Chrestman, as you well know. But I want to say this. I think I talked about this recently. The YouTube algorithm. If you guys want to do something positive for the podcast, if you really want to do something positive, commenting on the YouTube video itself, like going to YouTube and leaving a comment there, that is what helps the podcast more than anything else with the getting out. For some reason, more than any other platform, YouTube is driven by comments on the page. So the one thing you can do is, if you ever watch a video, it doesn't have to be a big comment, by the way. It could be 2 words. Oh, good job, nice video, whatever the case. It doesn't matter. The comments drive the algorithm more than anything else, more than the thumbs up, more than sharing it, more than getting organic views. For whatever reason, comments do it. So if you ever want to help the podcast, that's the number one thing you can do. Leave a comment. It is incredibly helpful, and I appreciate everyone who does. I try to respond to most of them, if not all of them, even the mean ones, because I find them funny. So anyway, if you want to help, that's what you do. And for right now, I'm going to leave it there. I will catch you guys next Friday.